What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another Too Far Out TV YouTube video. My name is Asteroid Austin. Today I'm going to be reading my chapter in the book As If by Magic, which is an anthology based on 9 authors who wrote about their life and how it has transformed through using intuitive practices and the creative orientation. So, thank you for joining me, and without further ado, we will dive right in. All right, so we are here live in Washington, D.C. Actually, we're not live, this is a video. But we are here in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to be reading my chapter in As If by Magic called Divine Intuition by Austin Florek. Growing up, bouncing between homes, Mom and Dad were never married. They did their best to love me with the tools they had, although I wasn't willing to recognize that for the longest time. I felt alone, unseen, and unloved. These feelings caused problems for me as I didn't know where they were coming from, and I wasn't willing to look. I spent my childhood learning how to and successfully running away from my feelings. I thought they were bad, and because they were inside me, I was bad. I began to act out in school, seeking attention wherever I could get it from, and this normally ended up in me getting in trouble, which just reinforced the bad feelings I felt inside. Soon, I started to mask my emotions by using drugs and alcohol. The first time I tried them, I was hooked. My life quickly started to spiral out of control. In middle school, I began smoking marijuana and taking pills. Before I graduated high school, I was using heroin on most days. I would steal from you, lie to you, and somehow make it your fault that I did any of it. When I couldn't have what I wanted, I would isolate myself, cry, and complain, and the only thing I could focus on was not having the drugs I was withdrawing from. My existence was miserable, and my actions were only making it worse. The justice system took an interest in me after my parents turned me into the police for my drug use. Their intentions were to help me, but I took it the wrong way and now saw my parents as the enemy. I started isolating more, running away, and looking at everything outside of me as the problem of why I felt and acted this way. Although my parents turned my stuff into the police station and I got into legal trouble and was put on probation, it didn't stop me from using drugs to escape. This started to bring me consequences I didn't like, in the form of going to treatment centers, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, more strict probation, and going to jail. I became so sick of everything in my life and environment that a girlfriend and I decided to run away across the country. I drove across the whole United States of America with no driver's license, no shoes on, and a felony warrant for my arrest. I was scared and I was running away, not knowing that no matter where I went, there I was. I continued to cause problems for myself and anyone around me. While in California at a hotel for the evening, I realized my girlfriend at the time was in a different hotel room with another guy and had left me alone for the night. This crushed me, and when she finally did return to our room, I told her it was time for us to end it and we were going back home. Once we arrived home, I was found by the police of my town and put into jail for a year. Even in jail, I found ways to get in trouble and was locked down because of it. This is the pattern that went on for a while until I started realizing that the things that were happening in my life were not always a result of someone else. Someone reminded me that I was the common denominator in all of my problems. I started to investigate my life, and while thinking back, I realized that of all of the problems in my life, there I was, the one causing it. The pattern became too obvious to miss, but too painful to admit. I continued to use drugs and alcohol to cover up the pain of this new realization, but something had changed. I knew too much to go on living my old way, and although it was hard to look at, I started making little changes. Little by little, I started to accept the way I was living wasn't going to get me anywhere and that I needed to do something different. One day, after having this realization and knowing something changed inside of me, I found myself being angry and aggressive towards my child and my dog. This time, I was able to see myself for what I was being in that moment. Instantly, I turned inward, knowing that something wasn't right. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Have I been acting this way for a long time? Why am I being so cruel? How did I become so angry? Right around the same time, I was introduced to my first spiritual teacher on YouTube. Although I had no idea what I was doing, I prayed for the first time. I prayed to God for guidance and had my first spiritual experience, resulting in my spiritual awakening. The only things that changed were inside of me, a place I have never visited on purpose, as I was committed to running away from my feelings at any cost. My mind had been on autopilot, always looking for ways to run from my emotions, and I realized that I had to go outside of my current frame of mind if I was going to make any change. I started to see the world differently, seeing more possibilities than ever, although not sure how to take action on it. I began to explore more about the topics of spirituality and consciousness. Everything was so confusing. It felt like my world was flipped upside down, and although it was painful, I kept going. It was intriguing to see a new way of life and discover why things happened. There was new meaning in life as I started to look at the world through the eyes of love. As I grew in my journey, I learned about how the mind works, and that mine had been running on autopilot based on the way I thought I should be from being taught by my family. Certain traditions, expectations, thought patterns, and beliefs were passed on to me like hand-me-downs. And since I had no idea what was what, I just took these beliefs on as my own. This meant that I was thinking, feeling, and acting like the other people in my life and environment without even knowing it. I wasn't being myself. I was being who I thought I should be based on their expectations. This led me to be very uncomfortable in my own skin because who was inside wasn't really me. I would act in strange ways foreign to my heart and soul's true calling, seeking validation from others because I wasn't truly happy with myself. During this awakening process, I started seeing things for how they truly were. I started seeing people for who they truly were. It was obvious to me that I had recently been living a big lie and the people around me were in on it. Nobody was being their true selves. We were all just pretending to be and act in a certain way because this is what was socially acceptable. Most of the conversations I found myself in were not authentic. Instead, they were about putting someone else down so we could feel superior. I also learned what it meant to be empathic, that I could sense other people's emotions. This was the beginning of my intuitive abilities coming online. This heightened sense of empathy was used as a tool to feel someone else's emotions and make sure they were having a good time or that I wasn't getting on their bad side. I developed this ability to ensure that I was a top-level people pleaser. I knew that if I could get on your good side, you wouldn't have anything against me and that maybe I could get what I wanted from you. I learned this out of fear. Because I was insecure, I didn't trust myself or my abilities. How could I when I didn't truly know myself? I would give my power and energy away to someone else so they could take care of me. A big example of this in my life was when I realized the relationship I was in with my son's mother was a codependent relationship. I was a stay-at-home dad at the time, while still addicted to using drugs to escape. She worked full-time and took care of all the bills. I never developed the confidence to earn my own money because I was afraid to take charge of my life. She didn't feel worthy unless she was providing for someone else. Since I wasn't working and didn't have my own money, I began to feel trapped in the relationship and the house. When she would come home from work, I would give her all my love and affection in hopes that she would take us somewhere or be willing to spend her money on us to do something we could all enjoy. This was just another way for me to escape my emotions. It gave her a sense of power over me, and I was okay with it because I felt powerless over myself. When I woke up to how this was playing out, I started to detach my energy from the situation. This was a hard thing for me because I had to take control of my own life, earn my own money, and think for myself. I had to become who I wasn't, and I had to do it alone. As I started to detach my energy, I woke up a sleeping giant. The first experience of me claiming my power back was met with resistance. All the relationships I had in life were based on a certain energy dynamic of me giving away my power in return for something. I let others control my mind for so long and had no idea it was happening. When I went to talk to someone else about my relationship situation, I was revealing to them that I was becoming more sovereign, and they also didn't like it. Whether conscious of it or not, my friends and family started to see me as their competition. I was the one who wanted to change and see things for how they actually were. I wanted to grow and become who I never thought I could be. I was revealing to my friends and family the flaws in our relationship. I was now exposing the codependent behaviors that were present within the family, which is a huge disruption to someone who would rather stay asleep in the matrix. I found that people would rather live the way they have been living, even if it's causing harm to themselves or others, because it's comfortable. To move into the unknown is uncomfortable and can bring up fear in an individual, making them resistant to change. In November of 2022, my father passed away from Lou Gehrig's disease. This was a hard thing for the family, to watch a loved one suffer before leaving Earth. It was a dramatic build-up to his final night during a Scorpio full moon. I remember falling asleep that night thinking about our last visit together. He couldn't talk, so he spoke to me by focusing his eyesight onto a keyboard, and it spoke for him. The next morning, I woke up to a text that he had passed away, and immediately, without effort, I imagined feeling for him. I could sense his energy. It felt like he was flying around me with so much joy and enthusiasm. I couldn't help but feel a euphoric sensation come over me, and I knew at that moment he was happy and free. A few days after his passing, I was doing Kundalini breathwork and had an experience I'll never forget. I started having flashes of memories and ideas that were all a synchronization of my life, and I could feel my dad's energy present. I was finally able to see how all the happenings in my life were orchestrating a bigger plan, and I knew which direction I would be going. I could feel my dad on the other side, blessing me with his presence and willingness to help. I could also see things I no longer wanted to be a part of. As this awakening unfolded, I was eager to share about it because it was exciting for me. When I shared these things with my family, a lot of them couldn't understand. I don't blame them for not understanding, but this definitely contributed to a feeling of loneliness and confusion. I could feel myself moving in new directions and away from what was no longer aligned. The more I attempted to separate myself from these energies, the more I understood their grip on me. I had been keeping myself in this state, just like everyone else was, because I was afraid to see the truth. Looking at the truth can sometimes be a hard thing to do, but a very rewarding process. This is when I chose to forgive myself and others for the way we had been acting. I chose to forgive others for allowing themselves to take advantage of me, and I chose to forgive myself for taking advantage of other people. I also chose to forgive myself for letting others treat me this way. Although it wasn't my fault that this happened, it was my responsibility to fix it. I also couldn't place the blame on anyone else because, of course, they were doing what they thought was best with the tools they had available to them. These thought patterns and traditions had been passed down from generation to generation because nobody has put a stop to them. I may have come from a toxic family environment, but that doesn't mean a toxic family environment has to come from me. I felt like a lot of people didn't understand what was happening to me. I feel like I was going through these changes. I was doing lots of research and acting in a totally different manner than I had been. I was pulling away from my family and friends, which led to isolation and them wondering where my energy was. I would spend hours at a time watching YouTube videos about spiritual awakening and tarot readings, listening to audiobooks on the subjects that interested me. The things I thought about and talked about changed drastically, and I started to give people advice where I used to ask for advice. The people around me didn't like this because they were used to me leaning on them. Now that I was becoming the power in my own life, I didn't seek these people out anymore, and I could feel that they were starting to become resentful. It was obvious that I was changing, and I had found a higher power in my life that was leading me toward a new opinion of myself, others, and life, and I was becoming a new and empowered version of myself by directly disobeying the systems I had relied upon so much. The control systems within my family were one of the hardest things to overcome because I was conditioned to think I needed them and must accept them no matter how they acted. While becoming a new version of myself, I stopped accepting behavior that I thought was inappropriate in my life. I had to part ways with friends and separate myself from family members. It was clear that I was on a new path and trajectory that nobody in my life at the time had ever considered or attempted to take on. I was dancing to the beat of my own drum, and I stood out. Around this time, an ad for William Whitecloud's program, Create Your Destiny, appeared before me on the internet. The program called to me so loud, I immediately signed up. I still wasn't working and was battling my addiction, so when I saw that the program was free, I was so excited. I took the course and developed my first set of choices. These are like personal affirmations that direct our minds to focus on what our heart desires to create. Because I wasn't working, I couldn't move forward with the curriculum at the time. The course was exactly what I needed to get hope back into my life. I could finally set a new direction towards what truly aligned in my soul. This encouraged me to start making bigger changes. I began my own YouTube videos discussing everything I learned through the last couple of years of rigorous study. My values started to change. Instead of wanting to run and hide from this emerging truth within, I decided to face it in a new direction. Now I wanted to clear up my legal issues and clean out more of the bad feelings I was holding on to. I desired to get sober for the first time in my life. More than anything, I just wanted to be free from everything that was holding me back, or rather, everything I was using to hold myself back. With the new vision and courage, I made a few choices I never made before. I decided to turn myself into the police station because at this time I had a warrant for my arrest again. Because of my honesty, they were willing to work with me, which came as a shocker to me. I also moved into a motel near where my son lived because I couldn't stand to live where I was anymore. The relationship between my son's mother and me got so bad that I needed to take space away. I was using my grandmother's car for a food delivery job. Finally, I decided to tackle my substance use. This was one of the hardest decisions I had ever made. I wasn't able to do it by myself because every time I was on the brink of being done, I took a wrong turn and decided to do it again. I was at my wit's end. I couldn't figure out what to do until one moment when I no longer was allowed to use grandma's car. I had no more days left in the motel before I had to leave, and I was totally broke. Something happened. I prayed again. I asked the universe what I was supposed to do because I had exhausted all of my options. At that moment, I heard the answer loud and clear. I instantly remembered that there was an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting nearby that would be starting in 30 minutes. This was the first time I had heard guidance from my intuition and instantly knew what I was supposed to do if I wanted to make the change I desired. Without thinking, I ran to my grandmother's house. Thank God she lived so close, so I could use her car one more time to go to this meeting. I sat through the meeting, and when it was over, I stood up crying and asking the people there for help. A few of the guys my age came to talk with me and took me out to eat after the meeting. This was the first I had heard of the rehabilitation center I would be going to just 5 days later. Primary Purpose in Sheffield, Ohio is where I felt guided to go to get help for my drug use and to have a place to stay while my mind, body, and spirit were being restored to their natural state. While at Primary Purpose, I really got to work building up my new identity. I went through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, took an intensive outpatient therapy group, and let some people love me while I figured out how to love myself. I also said my choices every morning and every night. After about 75 days in the halfway portion of the facility, completing the program and getting a job, I was eligible to move up to the 3/4 way living area. Now I was living in an apartment-style house with a few other guys who were doing the same thing. I paid rent, went to work, and went to AA meetings. Now that I was in the right headspace and earning my own money, I was finally ready to retake Create Your Destiny and take the next set of classes. This period of my life had led to some massive changes, and now I was ready to take my new identity and my new skills of reality creation to the next level. Quickly, I started attracting new opportunities in my life, from promotions at work to being asked to lead retreats for AA and being asked to be a co-author in this book. These changes were occurring rapidly because of my new outlook on life and the tools I was given. I had developed these spiritual tools that allowed me to tap into my creativity and intuition like never before. I also learned how to listen to my heart as a guide rather than listening to the advice of people who were not on the same path nor had the same vision as me. It became abundantly clear to me that I had gone wrong for all of these years. I was programmed to think I should be a certain way, which went against the calling of my heart and soul. In my mind, I held beliefs that did not serve my highest good, nor did these beliefs align with what I truly wanted to create in the world. If before I was fighting to travel upstream, now I am flowing with the current on the path of least resistance. Now I am focusing on the things I truly love, not what I was taught to value. By changing my focus, I started changing the world around me. By changing the world around me to fit what I feel inside, I've created a perpetual spiral towards creating what I love and loving what I create, leading to more and more joy in my life. After some time living in the treatment facility, I got to a point where I was ready to move out and move on with my life. I wanted more freedom and less supervision. I had a sponsor with AA at the time, and I noticed that this was another individual who I started to allow in my life and direct the way I was thinking, and because I was looking for more creative freedom, I decided to leave the program and facility to explore. This was a very scary moment for me because it meant that I was going to be doing this on my own. At this point, I had no one to mentor me, and I was living off the fly of my own creative desire and intuition. I quickly learned that this was an invitation to free fall into the universe and see if I could manifest my desired reality. After living in my car for a couple months and spending the rest of my earnings from my previous job, I crash landed at my grandma's house, and the story continues, however I will it. This is when I learned that having a coach or someone to hold you accountable for your creations was without a doubt one of the most important aspects of living in a creative orientation. It's imperative to continue in your forward momentum if you desire to keep climbing higher. What I mean by this is we must build freedom in our lives. If I do nothing and think that I am free, I will not get very far. To create a life that I desire, I must build it through my actions, creating a character or a version of myself that has already accomplished what I would love to accomplish. By committing to daily habits that build this character and taking aligned, inspired action, I create the life of my dreams quicker than I thought was possible otherwise. Today, I live by intuitive means. I love creating YouTube videos and courses helping people understand this work at a deeper level. My intuition helps me discover what my heart really wants to express, and I allow myself space to feel how I want and flow into what I desire to create. I am still learning and growing in my process, and as long as I am willing to make mistakes or miss the mark, then I will be more apt to commit myself to the process, focusing on my true end result and creating what I love. Sometimes I make mistakes in my creative process, but I use it to my advantage to learn and grow from. Allowing myself to learn from mistakes and continue to grow and get better, stronger, and more accurate for next time, I will continue to strive, be joyful, and create the things that I truly love in this world. Freeing myself from the chains of my old mindset, addictions, generational thought patterns, and behaviors has been one of the most impactful things in my life. I'm very grateful for the classes and opportunities I've had in life to learn about these spiritual tools and lessons that allow me to grow better each day. I continually strive to get more free and create more beautiful things in my life so that I can be of service to the next person who is stuck and help them unchain themselves. Impacting one heart has a ripple effect on other hearts, and as we love ourselves and those around us, we are creating more and more love on the planet, creating a better humanity for all. The end. So there you have it. Divine Intuition, read by the author in Washington, D.C. More videos to come. Stay tuned. Peace.